Stop me if you've heard this one. Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I. Yeah, a lot of people have heard that. That is an actual very common misconception in schizophrenia, and you're going to learn more about that today on this episode of MysterE's Mysteries with me, Mr. E. We'll be talking about all things psychology. As we talk about schizophrenia, people oftentimes they picture and they imagine these movies that they have seen, things like A Beautiful Mind, et cetera, where people are ravaged with hallucinations and delusions. Just to kind of give you a brief idea about what schizophrenia is, we're going to talk about what it is, and we're going to talk a little bit about the misconceptions that are involved. So schizophrenia is considered what is classified as a psychotic disorder. A lot of times in common speak, we say things like, oh my God, that person's so psycho, da, 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 da. And oftentimes it's related to people being violent, that sort of thing. And a lot of times when you are hearing about schizophrenia, you are hearing about people that have committed horrible crimes, and they also happen to be schizophrenic. And we lose sight of the fact that the majority of people with schizophrenia are not harmful towards others. They can be harmful towards themselves, but not towards others. So what does it mean to be actively psychotic? So when you have schizophrenia as a psychotic disorder and somebody is actively psychotic, they are suffering what is called a break from reality, which means they cannot tell what's real from what's unreal. My aunt put it this way. My aunt has suffered from paranoid schizophrenia for, she's 80, and it's since she was 12 or 13. And she put it this way: when she was in the throes of these psychotic breaks, she couldn't tell if she was dreaming and having a nightmare or if she was actually awake. She had no concept of what was real and what was unreal. And that is the definition of a psychotic disorder. A couple things that people don't know about schizophrenia is there's a whole bunch of different kinds. I'm just going to talk about 5 of them. And I'm just going to talk very briefly about each one, just so you have a little bit of an understanding about the differences that exist with schizophrenia. Okay, so one of them, and this is the one that gets the most play. It also happens to be the one that's most common, and that's going to be paranoid schizophrenia. When people have paranoid schizophrenia, they have the break from reality. They cannot tell what's real from what's unreal, and they also suffer from what are called delusions. And the two most and delusions are bizarre thought patterns that are so illogical that they cannot be true. And there are many different types of delusions. We're going to talk about 2 of them right now. The 2 that somebody with paranoid schizophrenia would suffer from would be paranoid delusions or persecutory delusions. That's going to be that common movie theme where somebody thinks that somebody's after them. The second one is going to be the grandiose delusions. These are oftentimes called delusions of grandeur. And when somebody suffers a delusion of grandeur, that's when they oftentimes believe that they have some sort of amazing power, or they have some sort of connection with somebody that is incredibly powerful. So if you take somebody with paranoid schizophrenia, we'll take a kind of a movie theme, John Nash from A Beautiful Mind. By the way, great movie, not very accurate in portraying schizophrenia, but whatever. Russell Crowe does a nice job. So somebody with paranoid schizophrenia may think that they have incredibly special code-breaking abilities, and they're in contact with the CIA or FBI or Interpol or whatever. But then they also have this level of paranoia where perhaps somebody has like the government has implanted a microchip in their arm, that type of thing. Something that is so bizarre and so strange. But they suffer from these bizarre, paranoid, and grandiose delusions or thought patterns that just don't make sense. So, paranoid schizophrenia is the one that we most often see in the movies, and it is the one that's most common. But there are actually 4 others that I'm going to talk about. So the next one is disorganized. Another type of schizophrenia involves incredibly bizarre speech patterns that oftentimes incorporate something that people call word salads, where they have this combination of words that are put together that make no sense whatsoever. They also will, if you ask them a question, they will not answer it. They will go off on some other totally bizarre sidetrack that makes no sense. There was a video about Gerald the schizophrenic, and they asked him a question, and he answered it by saying, "You know what I can tell you? I can tell you that that painting has a headache." Those are the types of bizarre thought patterns and disorganized thoughts that we're talking about. Okay, a third type is something called undifferentiated. Undifferentiated is kind of like a combination of all different types of schizophrenias. Typically, you're not diagnosed with undifferentiated nearly as much, but that's kind of a combination of all, where you're not quite paranoid, you're not quite a paranoid schizophrenic. They don't know quite how to label you. The next one is catatonic. This is the one where individuals kind of walk around in a stupor. They shuffle their feet around. Aimless, purposeless behavior, parrot-like talking. They'll repeat what other people have to say, but they really don't have anything to say themselves. And then they'll, like I said, just repeated behavior, like twisting their hair or rocking back and forth, that type of repetitive behavior. And then the last one is something that I'm going to talk about, is something called residual. And with residual schizophrenia, what you have is you have a case where a person has had, like, let's say paranoid delusions, and then let's say a wave of hallucinations. And again, I didn't state this. Most people know this, but I'll say it just in case. Hallucinations are going to be when we perceive things that aren't there. So we hear, see, taste, touch, smell something that is actually not present. So there's no sensory information coming in, yet our brain is creating something. So with residual, somebody has delusions and hallucinations, and when they go away, the person will actually suffer what would be similar to withdrawal symptoms from a drug addict, where they sort of crash. And they really don't really want to do anything. They don't move, they don't interact, they don't socialize, they don't work, nothing. So those are the different types of schizophrenias. Now, I mentioned a lot of different symptoms that are involved with this, and I just want to talk about those symptoms categorically for a moment. There are 2 categories of symptoms when we deal with schizophrenia. Like I said, the ones that we most often hear about are going to be the positive symptoms. Positive does not mean good. Positive means added on to the person. So positive symptoms would be the hallucinations, the delusions, and disorganized speech. Those would be 3 types of positive symptoms. And those are the ones that are most portrayed in movies, that sort of thing. But the negative symptoms are the ones that are oftentimes just so debilitating. Negative symptoms are when things are taken away. And the most common things that are taken away from somebody with schizophrenia will be emotion, which is called flat affect. Okay. Flat affect is when they lose any sense of emotion about anything. They also experience a complete lack of any sort of desire or any sort of connection socially with anybody else. And the third thing is a total lack or desire of wanting to do things that would be of typical interest for them. So those are the negative symptoms. And those are some of the symptoms that don't get nearly as much airtime as the positive symptoms, but can be just as debilitating, if not more debilitating, as the positive symptoms. As we move forward with several more of our podcasts, I'm going to be talking about drugs that are used to treat schizophrenia. I'm going to be talking about different famous individuals that have either suffered from schizophrenia or have been influenced by others having schizophrenia. And these podcasts are going to kind of dive into more of the symptomology and the etiology, epidemiology, those types of things of schizophrenia. And I'm also going to talk, just kind of a little snippet here, I'm also going to talk about a really, really fascinating discovery that psychologists made related to schizophrenia and the flu virus. So stay tuned for more of those discussions. Again, I am Mr. E. This is MysterE's Mysteries. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Go ahead and subscribe to us on anything that does podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And also another shout out to my producer and director, Bear Wade, for all that he does for our programs. If you want to get started, if you want to be an influencer, podcaster, etc., make sure you reach out to us and we will get you in touch. You guys have a great day. See ya.